Hello everybody, John12 back here again with another video, and I'm here to give you another top 5 list. Yes, it's that time of the week again, so let's get into this week's top 5 list. Now, of course, for this specific week, my top 5 list is the top 5 DC movies that never got made. Yes, before we enter 2016, thank God, which is going to be freaking superhero movie galore, which I can't wait for, we are going to be seeing the start of the DC Extended Universe. Finally, Warner Brothers has got their head out of their asses and finally developing a cinematic universe for DC fans. And I can't wait for that. Unfortunately, they had tons of opportunities to do this over the last decade. Yes, these are specific superhero movies dedicated in the DC universe that almost got made, but then got freaking came to a screeching halt, and we never got to see them, and they never saw the light of day. Some of these you may have heard of, some of these people have made documentaries on, and some of these are movies that just got stopped right at the pre-production stage. But that being said, these are personal movies that I would have loved to have seen, and I'm pretty sure I hope all of you would love to have seen them as well. But seeing as how we are going to be getting, finally, the DC Extended Universe that we've been wanting, so maybe we will see these movies at some capacity in the future, but at the end of the day, these are just specific superhero DC Universe movies that I wish we could have seen sooner. But that being said, let's just get right down to it. Coming up at number 5 on this list has to go to David S. Goyer's Green Arrow Escape from Supermax. Now, this is probably a movie that you may or may not have heard of, but essentially back in the good old days when David S. Goyer was working on the Dark Knight trilogy with Chris Nolan, of course, seeing as how successful and overly successful that franchise was, Warner Brothers, of course, wanted to keep David S. Goyer around to keep doing other kind of DC properties, and I'm pretty sure David S. Goyer has probably worked on the most comic book DC Universe movies that never got made. I mean, like, he was working on so many movies. Deathstroke, Teen Titans. Like, there were so many comic book movies that we probably don't even know about that he was in pre-production for that just never saw a lot of day, and this was one of them. Yes, he had written a script, a screenplay, for a Green Arrow movie that would feature Black Canary and a bunch of other various supervillains from various rogues galleries, ranging from his rogues gallery all the way to Batman, ironically enough. And of course, before we got to see the cinematic awesomeness of a Green Arrow on the CW, David S. Goyer was actually going to be doing this property. It was supposed to, if memory serves me correct, the story was supposed to follow Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, I guess being put in jail, or like trying to break into jail, and essentially trying to go through the various stages of, like, I guess getting something and trying to escape out of the jail. It was basically, if you think about it in retrospect, this movie is essentially what Dredd was. If you ever saw Dredd, the new movie, not the Sylvester Stallone movie, the other one, the one with Carl Urban, if you ever saw that movie, that's essentially what this story would have been, except with Green Arrow, and it would have been in the DC universe. That's essentially what it was. And even though we got to see a awesome live-action adaptation of Green Arrow on the CW, it would have been really awesome to have a Green Arrow movie. Unfortunately, I guess we're going to have to wait to see what the DC Extended Universe does. But that being said, moving off of that and going to number 4 on this list has to go to Darren Aronofsky's Batman Year One. Yes, back in the day before Chris Nolan took on the heavy duty of rebooting the Batman franchise, and right after Joe Schumacher hacked the freaking Batman franchise, Darren Aronofsky was hired by Warner Brothers to actually do a Batman reboot. He was going to do, essentially Warner Brothers wanted to make a live-action adaptation, a very faithful adaptation to Batman Year One, which, of course, if you haven't seen it, was a Frank Miller story, which dedicated a specific point in time in Batman's first year as Batman, and of course, James Gordon's first year in Gotham City. And it was supposed to be a story, it's essentially a story of their respected journeys becoming the people that we will inevitably love them for, kind of paralleling. And it was just, it's a really badass, amazing story. Of course, if you've seen any of Batman, Frank Miller's earlier Batman work, you're definitely going to love this one. But essentially, Darren Aronofsky, the god of depressing, dark movies, was supposed to freaking make a Batman movie. Yeah, a Batman movie. And not any regular Batman movie, a Batman Year One movie. Just think of how epic and awesome, and not to mention incredibly dark that movie would have been. Why, Warner Brothers? Why did you not do this? Now, granted, we got to get Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, which essentially is a pretty faithful, realistic adaptation of Batman Year One. But overall, it would have been also pretty interesting, just in an alternate universe, to see what a Darren Aronofsky Batman movie could have looked like. I mean, man, that would have been like the pinnacle of depressing movies, especially with Batman in it. But that being said, moving off of that and going to number 3 on this list has to go to Joss Whedon's Wonder Woman. Now, this is probably the most public story that a lot of people already know. Back before Joss Whedon was the fan of the nerds, which he still is now, or at least king of the nerds, rather, he essentially was hired by Warner Brothers to work on a Wonder Woman movie back before the DC Extended Universe, back before the Dark Knight trilogy, even back before freaking the Avengers movie. Joss Whedon was working on a DC movie. Now, I know this is probably hard for people to believe and hard for people to understand and comprehend into their freaking computers, but think about this. Joss Whedon, the guy who gave us the pinnacle of superhero movies, which is the Avengers, Marvel's the freaking Avengers, he was working on a Wonder Woman movie. A fucking Wonder Woman movie. And he left it because he hated the fact that how Warner Brothers was fucking with him. Essentially, Warner Brothers, like, if you ever seen the story behind Josh Trank and 20th Century Fox, that's basically what was going down between Joss Whedon and Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers had no belief in Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon was just this really big, nerdy, comic book, geeky TV guy at the time. He wasn't the big, over-the-top god that we know him today from the Avengers fame. He wasn't that guy yet. He was still a pretty epic dude who was an amazing writer, but he wasn't that guy yet. So I can understand why Warner Brothers would want to fuck with him, but at the end of the day, you have to think about this, folks. You have to think about this. In retrospect, a Joss Whedon DC movie before he made the Avengers? I want to live in that world. I want to see what that world could have looked like. God, it would have been so awesome to see that movie. Of course, you can read the script, but reading a script is not the same than seeing the visuals. I mean, come on. The dude who made the Avengers did not get to make Warner Brothers' first Wonder Woman movie, which is a movie that should have been out a decade ago. I could be pissed off all day, but I'm going to move off of that and go to number 2 on this list, which has to go to George Miller's Justice League Mortal. Now, of course, this is probably another comic book movie that you probably heard of some in some vernacular and in some capacity, but essentially they're actually making a documentary on why this movie didn't get made, ironically enough. But overall, back before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, back before Joss Whedon's Avengers, and back before the end of freaking Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, George Miller was actually going to give us our first ever superhero team-up movie. I mean, granted, you have Bryan Singer's X-Men, but you know what I mean. Like a team-up movie of various characters that we've never seen before actually being cinematically done. Justice League. He was going to give us that. Unfortunately, because of the writer's strike and various other problems with Warner Brothers, basically, 2 things happened. This movie was right at the cusp of being made. It was seconds away of being shot on film. But this is what happened. 2 things. This is kind of like my speculation, and also kind of like public knowledge. Number 1, the writer's strike happened. So, of course, that fucking bombed this movie. And Warner Brothers was like, fuck it. Number 2, Warner Brothers saw how incredibly and universally successful the Chris Nolan's The Dark Knight movie was, and thought to themselves, yeah, we love fucking awards and we love money. So we're going to continue and going on and doing more of that. That's essentially what this is all about. That's essentially what happened here. They essentially decided to go and do more of Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Which, to I say, wasn't a terrible move, but still, in a world where Marvel has really taken the game out of DC and Warner Brothers' scope, it would have been nice to know, and at least have achieved, that Warner Brothers had a Justice League movie, and could have had a Justice League movie before that even started, with the guy who created the Mad Max franchise, and the guy who directed the possibly, in a lot of people's personal category and list, of the best movie of 2015 in Mad Max Fury Road. Warner Brothers didn't make that guy's movie, that guy's Justice League movie that would contain a freaking Martian Manhunter, which we had to get live action in fucking Supergirl, and not in the movies? Someone go to Warner Brothers and bitch slap him right now. But that being said, And moving off of that, let's name off some honorable mentions. I'm only going to mention really just one because it angers me to no end, just like the Justice League Mortal and Joss Whedon's Wonder Woman movie. It angers me to no end that Warner Brothers didn't get their head out of their ass and actually make this movie. But it is the only movie that should be on this list in any kind of capacity, which is Superman Flyby. Yes, a movie, a Superman movie, mind you, that was going to be made by J.J. Abrams. I don't know if anybody heard me correctly. J.J. Abrams was going to make a Superman movie. Back before Brandon Routh Superman movie, Superman Returns, back before Man of Steel, back before the DC Extended Universe, back before Marvel Cinematic Universe, back before even Star Wars The Force Awakens, which comes out this week, J.J. Abrams was making a Superman movie. He was making a fucking Superman movie. And that never saw the light of day. I want to shit in the office of Warner Brothers right now so hardcore, guys. But that being said, that's the only honorable mention that's really worth of actually mentioning. But that being said, moving off of that and going to number one on this list, which is the creme de la creme of all DC comic movies that never got made. Superman Lives. Yes, the Superman Lives movie that was going to be directed by Tim Burton never got made and was a movie that I always wish we could have saw. Now, granted, could have been better than any of the other previous movies I mentioned, like George Miller's Justice League movie or Joss Whedon's Wonder Woman movie? Of course not. Those guys make way better superhero movies than Tim Burton ever made. No offense to Tim Burton's '89 Batman, that's just my subjective opinion. It's obviously very much outdated in comparison to superhero movies of today, especially with these amazing filmmakers that are making them today. Unfortunately, back in the day, I never really had that much interest in Tim Burton's Superman movie. I thought it was always an interesting choice that they wanted Tim Burton to direct a Superman movie with Nicolas Cage as Superman. I always thought that was an odd choice, but it was always a movie I was like, whatever. We never got to see it. Fuck it, who cares? But then my world changed. My mind was warped. Earlier, last year I think, John Schnepp, who of course I'm pretty sure a lot of you have known or know him from Collider and all the YouTube stuff, he directed a documentary called, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. It's a pretty awesome documentary. I personally really like it. And in that movie, he pretty much shows you the death of why this movie never got made. And it's a pretty great documentary. I definitely suggest you check it out. But here's the thing. Before watching the documentary, I had two shits about this. I gave two shits about this movie. I never cared for it. I never thought it was an interesting Superman movie that ever should have been made. But then when you see the documentary and seeing how much work and how much art, direction they were going in, and how much awesome ideas that Tim Burton and Nicolas Cage were throwing at each other at the time for this movie, it makes you wish that this movie actually got made. I mean, I never thought I could say that out loud. Like a Tim Burton directed Superman movie with Nicolas Cage starring as Superman. I want to see that. I'm shocked that I'm saying that out loud, but it's true. I really, really, really wish I could have seen this. But it never got made, and unfortunately, we're never going to see it. And of course, we're at the end of this top 5 list, and I hope you guys enjoyed. This has been my personal list of top 5 DC movies that never got made, that I wish gotten made. Which, of course, David S. Goyer's Green Arrow movie, Darren Aronofsky's Batman movie, Joss Whedon's Wonder Woman movie, George Miller's Justice League movie, and of course, Tim Burton's Superman movie. Let me know what your personal top 5 lists are below. What are specific Superman, Batman, or any other DC properties that were in production but then got stopped by Warner Brothers and never saw the light of day? What are personal movies that you wish you could have seen and came out that we are probably never going to get or possibly will get with the DC Extended Universe? Was there a Teen Titans movie you would have liked to have seen that never got made, that almost got made? Is there a specific version of Batman that you wish, got made that never got made? Let me know in the comments section below. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jonch12. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And I hope you guys enjoyed. And this has been Jonch12.